What's up everybody, Executives here, and welcome to the Ultimate Warrior Burning Crusade PvP guide. In this guide I'll be covering everything from World PvP to Arena, most importantly Arena and Battlegrounds. I'll be covering gear, talents, tips and tricks, and everything. So please, if you guys need to skip to any section of this video, there will be timestamps as a pinned comment. In addition to that, if you guys really want the best kind of guide, if you kind of already know how to play Warrior, I have a lot of live commentary videos on my channel. And in my opinion, this is the best way how you can learn Warrior because you can see it being demonstrated. So if you guys are a much more visual player and react better to watching gameplay and learning off of that, be sure to check out my live commentaries. Otherwise, let's hop right into this. The first thing I'll cover is new spells to Warrior. From TBC, from classic vanilla into the Burning Crusade, Warrior has gotten like a new spell or two. Definitely not compared to Mage or Shadow Priest or something that got a lot more spells. The biggest difference going into the Burning Crusade is spell reflection. Now this is huge because this allows you to switch to a one-hander and a shield and spell reflect in both battle stance and defensive stance. So this is essential for surviving against mages or any caster of any kind, because if you can spell reflect a UA or a Frostbolt in a Shatter or in a Nova, or an Ice Lance in a Nova, that's 2,000 damage from that mage that you are going to reflect back to him. So it's very, very, very helpful. Now the other new spell that we got, which is also pretty huge, is Intervene. Now this is phenomenal for Arena or any sort of World PvP if you have a partner, or Battleground if you have a flag carrier or something. Basically, you run high speed towards a party member, intercepting the next melee or ranged attack made against them. This absorbs kidney shot, this absorbs blind, this absorbs cheap shot, anything, shiv, kick, anything that's physical damage. It doesn't absorb CS, it doesn't absorb anything like a Frostbolt or anything like that. But if you can time this correctly in Arena, you can preemptively intervene your friendly target. So if I see that my pally's about to get opened up on by the rogue, I can intervene him and I can absorb that cheap shot, and that'll allow the pally to get away. In addition to that, the combo points will now go on me. So if the rogue has 4 combo points and I intervene my pally, and then he sinister strikes or shivs or hemos to get that 5th combo point, it will then go to me, and so then he will now have reset his combo points. So it's very, very good against rogues and warriors as well. In addition to intervene and spell reflection, you also gain victory rush. Victory rush does not heal you in TBC, so it's not really worth mentioning. Last but not least, we also got Commanding Shout, which is basically a fortitude that can't be dispelled. So that is huge for Arena, because generally you want to stack as much HP as possible for that survive, because the damage will come naturally as Warrior. You need to be able to live the enemy's goes. So Commanding Shout is massive in TBC. Alright, now I'll go over talents. I think talents are extremely important in TBC, not just for Warrior, but for all classes, because for the specific event that you're doing, whether it's Arena or Battlegrounds or PvE, there's generally a specific spec that goes with that. It's not as universal as it kind of was in Classic, in my opinion. I think that specs are much more in the air with options for different talent points. Anyways, so in my arms tree obviously points all the way down into Mortal Strike. Now the big ones here to pick up, obviously Mace Spec, huge change to Mace Spec. Now Mace Spec generates 7 rage if it procs, so it's insane. You always have rage. That's why the argument of Mace specialization versus endless rage, because a lot of people say you should go endless rage in Arena for that constant uptime, so you can get as many mortal strikes and heroic strikes out as possible. I disagree with that. I think that sweeping strikes is the better build, but I'll get into that shortly. Points into improved intercept, obviously into second wind as well, Imp Hamstring, and then 1 into Mortal Strike and 1 into Blood Frenzy. So yeah, very standard Arms Warrior build. Nothing too big has changed here, except for you don't get Tactical Mastery in this tree. Tactical Mastery is now in Prot, so you have to have 3 points, not 5 points, to be able to stand stance. So a little bit of a change there. And then, yeah, you don't need to spec into Imprint. Anyways, in the Fury tree, I spec all the way down into Sweeping Strikes like usual. Obviously a point in Piercing Howl. I put 1 into Improved Demo Shout as opposed to Improved Commanding or Battle Shout. I think 8% is more than 5%, so that's why I chose that. Now I also take Imp Slam. This is massive in Arena, and I think an extremely underrated talent. 90% of all the warriors in the world run Weapon Mastery. This reduces the disarm effect by 50%, meaning disarm goes from an 8-second disarm to a 4-second disarm, and also reduces the chance for your attacks to be dodged by 2%. So a very huge talent here. But in my opinion, I think especially for 3v3 Arena, Imp Slam is the more beneficial talent, because at the end of the day, it really comes down to that burst potential. And in an intercept, you can intercept into a auto attack and then cast an Imp Slam and then Mortal Strike right out of that, and then Whirlwind out of that, maybe even an Execute. And if you need to constantly rage dump, you can intercept in Imp Slam, Imp Slam, Imp Slam into a Mortal Strike or something. It's insane. It's a very underrated talent. As you guys know, I am a massive fan of Slam, just the ability as a whole. It's one of my favorite warrior abilities. Weapon Mastery, very good, don't get me wrong. 2% reduced chance for your attacks to be dodged is huge against rogues, huge against druids. It's very, very good, but I just prefer the Imp Slam spec. And then, yeah, Points of Enrage. The last thing I'll cover is Sweeping Strikes. Now, why do I think Sweeping Strikes is so good, and why I take it over Endless Rage? The biggest thing is just uptime and cleave damage. Especially in 3v3 Arena, sometimes you're not as much in 2s especially, but in 3v3 Arena, if you can get 2 targets to stack on top of each other, whether it's Rogue Mage, whether it's a Warlock and his pet, whether it's a Hunter and his pet, or you're on a healer like a Shaman and his warrior is on you, but you're cleaving 2 targets, this will freaking 5x your damage. It does so much damage. You're constantly hitting both targets. You cannot dodge a Sweeping Strikes attack, so it goes through evasion. It just does so damage. I highly recommend pairing Sweeping Strikes with a Mortal Strike, with an Execute, with a Cleave, or with a Whirlwind. Outside of that, it's not super good with Heroic Strike, depending on if you have cooldowns popped. If you have CDs popped, then Heroic Strike is really good, and then sometimes Overpower is good, but I would recommend trying to get up a Mortal Strike right away, or a Whirlwind. So yeah, that's my talent tree. If you guys have any questions or suggestions, I will be open to them. I didn't run points in Improved Charge or any of the other talents here. Now I'll talk about my gear. Gear is kind of weird in TBC because I can't really give you specifics, because it really depends on what avenue of TBC you're doing. If you're just doing Battlegrounds but you mostly do PvP, PvE, then you're going to have a lot of PvE gear. But if you're going to do arenas and you can get high rating, then you already know what gear you're going for. It's going to be whatever season's gear it is. So my recommendation for Warrior, at least at the start of TBC, is to go to this website called 70 Upgrades. Here you can kind of theory craft and come up with an idea of some of the pieces of gear you want to go for. So I really want to go for these shoulders, and I really want to go for this axe, and those both drop I think from Magtheridon's Lair. So very, very nice, or Karazhan. But this website's super helpful for theory crafting your gear. But the main stats you want to focus on are stamina, strength, and that's basically it. Stamina and strength are the 2 most important things. Crit comes naturally, so does your kind of hit rating. Hit rating, you want to have at least 5% hit rating. I am over the hit cap, but yeah, it also reduces enemy armor. I stack mainly stamina and strength because warrior is all about surviving. If you can survive as a warrior, the longer you can survive, the more damage you will do. Warrior damage is natural. You don't have to stack all this crit or all this attack power right off the bat and be this kind of glass cannon. No, you should be a very kind of tanky target with as much burst potential as possible. That's why I run an on-use PvP trinket, increases my attack power, and that's why I run Imp Slam, because I can run around with a one-hander and a shield the whole game and then look for that one intercept, go in there, get off 2 Imp Slams with the Death Wish, and they're done for. So yeah, keep that in mind. What you want to try and shoot for, at least for crit, is you want to try and have at least around 25 to 26% crit in Berserker stance. This will be achievable at the start of the Burning Crusade, around 26, maybe hopefully closer to 30%. Remember that mace specialization gives you an extra 7 rage when using a mace, so axe spec is not quite as good, arguably, if you have that extra stun and that extra rage. I don't know if the diminishing return mechanic will be different from the normal stun DR of intercept, like it is on private servers. On private servers, mace stun is its own DR score. Another thing to look out for is classic warrior gear that'll be used in TBC Arena, most notably Life-Giving Gem and Badge of the Swarm Guard. If you guys have those items in Classic right now, hold on to them, put them in your bags, because that will still be very, very useful in TBC Arena, especially Badge of the Swarm Guard at the start. Season 1, if you have Badge of the Swarm Guard and you have a really good two-hander, you are going to demolish Arena. Next, I'll show you guys my macros. Now, my macros are very simple. I really do not use a lot of macros on Warrior. I think to become an excellent Warrior, you should get used to switching stances manually for abilities like Overpower or Disarm, and it'll make you much more fluid on the class. So a lot of the macros that I use are generally for focus target or for a party target or something like that. So of course I have defensive stance, intervene macros. This is for party 1, party 2, or just nobody. So if you press this macro that I have displayed here, and you're targeting something else, let's say you're targeting an enemy and you know your pally is about to get opened up on with a cheap shot, you can spam this macro and it will not clear your current target. So it's very nice. I also use a spell reflect macro. This just puts on a one-hander and a shield. I would normally do this manually because I'm very quick at switching to a one-hander and a shield, but it is kind of nice to just kind of spam that one button and know it'll go off. Also, I always kind of have high latency, 175 latency, so it's kind of hard to do it manually. Other macro I have is just switching from a two-hander to a one-hander and a shield. It's just slash equip and then the items. So yeah, that's it. I pretty much just have a spell reflect macro and an intervene macro and then a focus macro. That's it. I'll tell you guys about some tips and tricks, but in a little bit I'll actually get into how to beat individual classes. But for now, I'll just tell you some very important things on Warrior that maybe a lot of people don't know about. First kind of key thing is targets cannot dodge or parry in a stun. So if you if you intercept or charge a target and they're stunned for that 1.5 seconds or that 3 seconds, they cannot dodge during that time. So that is when you want to do your biggest kill window. In addition to that, they cannot dodge or parry when you're behind the target. So if they're running away from you and you're facing directly behind them, they can't dodge your Mortal Strike. So a lot of people don't know about that, so it's very important to keep in mind if you're trying to go for that defensive disarm and you're facing a rogue who's got evasion popped, try to get behind the rogue and disarm him when his back is turned to you, and you'll actually land the disarm as opposed to it getting dodged. Another kind of key thing that people don't realize, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, spell reflection is not on global cooldown. So let's say I'm fighting a rogue in Zerker stance right here, and I've got a Druid casting Cyclone on me. I can very easily switch to battle stance and get off a spell reflection if I have the rage for it while still being on global. So if I'm fighting the rogue and he just vanished, I'm gonna get off a demo shout, and then rogue's casting clone, I can easily switch and spell reflect that. If I had the rage for it, my actual spell reflection would have gone off, but I did that entire sequence while on global cooldown. So it's very easy, or not easy, but if you can react fast enough, it's very helpful to reflect a poly, to reflect a clone. Another kind of tip is disarm is massive. You want to be using disarm off of cooldown in arena for TBC. Disarm on hunters, disarm on rogues, disarm on warriors all the time, because this is a massive defensive cooldown that a lot of people don't utilize in classic. A lot of people run weapon chains in classic. In TBC, that's not going to be the case. With this executioner enchant, I think it gives 72 attack power. It's ridiculous. Everyone's going to be running that. Another kind of tip, demo shout. Massively underrated. Demo shout you should use against every melee target. In addition to that, the range is very OP. With that, with booming voice talent, it increases the area of effect of demo shout by 50%. So I don't know if this includes it. So it's either 15 yards or it's 22.5 yards. So 22.5 yards away is a very, very big range for an AoE shout. So if that rogue, if your Druid just got sapped and you're trying to look out for that rogue, you could try to maybe fake him and then come back and do a nice demo shout, and you might actually get him over here or something. It happens all the time. I've gotten some crazy long range demo shouts. So in addition to that, if you see a rogue vanish, the first thing you do is demo shout. You can get him out of stealth immediately with demo shout before your rend bleed ticks, before your deep wound bleed ticks or anything. Demo shout will be faster to get him out of stealth so he doesn't open up on you with the cheap shot. Intimidating shout is really, really good against undead because it'll still put them on global cooldown. If you run up to, let's say, a undead priest and you're fighting undead priest versus undead mage, I'm gonna get a charge off on the mage. The priest is gonna maybe put up a power word shield. I'm gonna fear the priest, and during that time he will have to go on global, and so my mage is allowed to cast poly on him during that time that he's Will of the Forsakening, and so he can't get a shadow word death out. So it's still useful to use intimidating shout as either a spell interrupt if he's casting and you missed your pummel, or as a brief kind of 1 second global CC. Last thing I'll cover, people may not realize you can cast sweeping strikes in both battle and berserker stance now, so you do not have to just be limited to battle stance to cast sweeping strikes. So if you want to get off that charge and then switch to berserker stance and do as much damage as you can for that increased crit chance to try and get more rage from crits, now you're allowed to pop sweeping strikes in berserker stance. In addition to that, one other thing I'll cover is a very useful kind of trick in arena. If you're facing a rogue priest or a rogue pally or something where the rogue is stealth and they have a non-stealth partner and the non-stealth partner is behind a pillar or running away or something, if you try to charge in, you still might get sapped. So what you can do is you can pre-Zerk Rage the sap and then charge in. It won't put you in combat. So let's say I'm mounted up or something and I've got the rogue, or I've got the priest behind the pillar, and I know the rogue is somewhere around here and I don't want to quite get sapped in battle stance. So I'm gonna go ahead and Zerk Rage and then switch back to battle and then get the charge off. This allows you to be immune to sap and fear if it still goes off, and gives you a little bit extra rage if he opens up on you. I'll cover what to do against each class. Now these tips apply to everything: World PvP, Arena, Duels, and Battlegrounds, but most importantly, Arena. First, I'll start with Rogue. Key things against Rogue: you constantly want to have a one-hander and a shield out against Rogues. Rogues do insane damage in TBC. and they have probably the most amount of CC and kill potential. A lot of warriors struggle with rogues because they dodge a lot of their abilities and the warrior dies very quickly. So the two things to do against that is you constantly sit with the one-hander and a shield out, and you're in D stance the majority of the time you're fighting the rogue. If it's a 1v1 like a duel, I'm in D stance probably 80% of the game. I'm switching to battle stance every time Overpower is off of cooldown. I'm proccing Overpower by trying to put up a rend on the rogue, so I'm spamming rend to have him dodge, but I'm also actually trying to get up a rend on him, so if he vanishes or blinds or resets, he's got a long bleed on him. So I constantly switch from defensive stance to battle stance and then back to defensive stance. Also against rogues, you can shield block their abilities. So if you're a really good warrior and you know that they have 5 combo points and they're about to eviscerate you, you can shield block and eviscerate and it'll do like half less damage. Same thing applies to a backstab, an ambush, a hemo, whatever it is. So shield blocking against rogues is very beneficial. Shield block, overpower, disarm, and demo shout is how you beat rogues. Moving on to mages. Mages, kind of key important thing to mages is stopping their water elemental. So whether this is via fear or by killing it or by interrupting it with a pummel, stopping their water ele is very essential because it not only does a lot of damage, but they also get freeze out of it. Now freeze, they generally use at the same exact time that they summon the mob, so you can't stop the first one, but you can try and stop the second one. And you could also try and stop the incoming damage from it. Otherwise, against mage, your only real toolkit is spell reflection. Outside of that, you've got escape artist, which is now an instant cast, but on a 1.75 minute cooldown. Hunters are very easy to beat, especially as a warrior, because they have a pet, so that means you're allowed to sweeping strikes. Sweeping strikes will kill both them and their pet very quickly. The key thing to beating hunter is to not get kited by a hunter. If they're max range and you're just chasing after them with a concussive shot on you, you're never going to catch up to them because they have increased range with that hunter's mark. So what you want to do is you want to run away from them, wait till you drop out of combat, charge their pet, then intercept them to try and close that massive gap between you and them. And so this is a very well-known strat and works very well if executed correctly. In addition to that, I don't know if you will be able to taunt to break CC, taunt pet to break CC in TBC. You can't currently in Classic, so I don't think it'll change. But on private servers, you could taunt the pet with the challenging shout, or with the taunt, or with the mocking blow, and it would break scatter, it would break trap, stuff like that. It's also good against hunter to use disarm. You want to disarm them, prevent those wing clips, prevent those raptor strikes from coming out. Or those mongoose bites. In addition to that, I'm not entirely sure if you can spell reflect traps yet. It's still up in the air, so I can't really give advice against that. But the kind of two key things to take away from hunters is it's generally obvious when they have scattershot or trap available, and so it's a 30-second cooldown, so if they use it right away, right at the start of a fight, or right at the start of a duel, like they generally do to put you in a CC or a trap, it's very obvious when it will be off of cooldown. So try and keep a mental timer on how long is left on scatter and trap, so when that happens, you can switch to a one-hander and a shield for it, and take significantly less damage from their aim shot, multi-shot, while you're sitting in that trap. At the start of a duel, I always start with a one-hander and a shield against a hunter until I'm in the first trap, and then once I'm out of the first trap and I can close that gap, I'll switch to a two-hander. Moving on to Red Pally. Red Pally and Paladin in general is pretty easy to counter. Don't waste rage on hamstring if you see freedom on the target. Disarm them during their on-use cooldowns, like on-use PvP trinket or wings. If they pop wings, they cannot bubble for a whole minute. Wings puts forbearance on paladins, so if a Red Pally or a Holy Pally pops wings, you should probably try and ride that target until forbearance is off of cooldown, and then they can bubble again. In addition to that, you can kick their execute. Their Hammer of Wrath is able to be kicked, but it's not able to be spell reflected, so keep that in mind. You can also spell reflect Hodge. Generally, a lot of paladins put Hodge up on the target, either their first global or right after their first judgment, so it's kind of easy to predict. Druid is going to be the healer you're going to face the most in arena, in world PvP, battlegrounds, everywhere. So it will be essential that you guys get good at fighting at fighting druids and getting good uptime on druids. The important thing against fighting druids are two things. One, Sunder armor. You need 5 stacks of Sunder armor on a druid if you want to kill it by yourself. If you have another, if you're in 3v3 arenas, you and another DPS could kill it, but if you want to kill it by yourself, you pretty much need 5 Sunders on that target. In addition to that, the second kind of tip is you can spell reflect Nature's Grasp. So Nature's Grasp is a buff that they put on themselves that if you melee attack them, it has a chance to proc roots on you. It's not 100% chance, so it's not on every melee attack, but it'll generally be on the second or third one. So if you have spell reflect up for long enough, it'll get those roots if they're in travel form. It's also important to watch out for their life bloom. If they have 3 life bloom stacks, it's kind of impossible to kill them, really. Unless you can kill them within the life bloom 6-second window, you're most likely not going to kill a target that has life bloom on it. So it's kind of good to constantly swap or to try and let those life bloom stacks fall off, like do an intercept right at 2 seconds of a 3-stack life bloom, and then don't do any damage, let those life bloom stacks fall off, and then do your damage, something along those lines. But that's where all of their healing is from. So if you ever see a target get topped instantly without NS, it's either Swiftmend or it's life bloom. So to recap, against druids, 5 Sunders all the time, constantly against druids, especially if they're good. They're going to be in bear form the majority of the time or trying to run away from you. So if they're constantly shape-shifting and switching out of form, don't hamstring when they come out of form, hamstring when they go back into form. So if they're in bear form, they come out of bear form to then go back into bear form. Don't hamstring 2 times, one when they come out and one when they go back in. Only try to hamstring once when they go back into form. Warriors are pretty easy to deal with as another warrior. In a 1v1 situation, all it comes down to is just who crits more. There are maybe a few minor differences that you can do to be a better warrior than someone else in a warrior versus warrior duel or something, but realistically it just comes down to who crits more. So against warriors, obviously disarm them, keep up 5 Sunders, keep up a demo shout, and then keep in mind that if you're fighting another melee class, the harder they hit you, you're going to get more rage and you're going to get enraged procs and you're going to be able to hit them harder. So I like to pop all my cooldowns on a warrior right away, at the start of a fight, because you're going to be enraged and you're going to be already taking a lot of damage and have a ton of rage to spend, so you're going to want to output all of that damage. Priest is the second healer that you'll fight the most in TBC. Key things to fighting a priest, nothing really to it. You can put up a Sunder or 2, that's really good to try and get through that inner fire, but one thing you want to keep in mind is that inner fire buff. It's that 20 stack yellow buff. If that falls off, they basically have no armor. They take an insane amount of damage. So if you can get those inner fire stacks off, you can kill the priest very easily. Outside of that, priest's PS, pain suppression, is dispellable, so if you have a teammate that can dispel it, you can just train priest the whole game. That's what I generally do against most games. I just train priest. They die very easily. The only kind of instant cast heals they have are their power word shields and their prayer of mending, but with mortal strike, prayer of mending is negated a little bit. It's still very, very good. Prayer of mending is. Only try to kick their holy school. If you have a teammate and you're double DPS 2s, or if you're playing 3s, you guys assign each other a school to kick. Hey, I'm gonna kick only holy and you guys only kick shadow, please. Something along those lines. And if you could just purge, and if you have a teammate that's able to dispel offensively, if you can dispel a fresh power word shield, a priest will die very, very, very quickly. Last thing is Warlock. Now, Warlocks are probably the strongest class in TBC in terms of damage for PvP. They don't need to cast hardly anything at all besides a Fear or an Immolate or maybe a Searing Pain, but outside of that, they don't have to cast in order to do damage if they're Soul Link. So don't be intimidated by Warlocks though. Warlocks, especially in Season 1, are still going to be very squishy. So you don't have to kill the Warlock pet in order to kill the Warlock. Yes, it helps a tremendous amount to kill the pet passively with like a sweeping strikes or just with AoE damage, but don't run into a 3v3 match and the first thing you do is train the pet the whole game. You're gonna get nowhere. You can still train the lock and kill lock without a pet if you have good CC on the enemy team. So don't be too intimidated by locks. Otherwise, just kick Shadow. I wouldn't waste a kick on Fire unless they're Destruction, but only kick Fears or Shadow Bolts or Drain Life or a Health Funnel or something like that. Don't kick an Immolate. Spell Reflecting against Warlocks is okay. Spell Reflecting in Agony is probably the best thing you could possibly do. Outside of that, Spell Reflecting a Fear might be nice, but just try and keep up uptime. Now I'll cover how to burst as a warrior. Now we have a ton of burst potential, and it's all kind of comes down to rage. So as long as you have rage, you're able to do your burst goes, but a few other kind of key factors play into that. So one thing to keep in mind is, does your target have any Sunder armor on it? Even if it's a mage, priest, something with not that much armor, an extra Sunder armor or two really goes a long way, really helps, really makes a difference. It's not needed, it's not a necessity, but if like you're in a twos match where you have a lot of uptime and you're just trying to do as much damage as you can, Sunder armor is really good. But I'll show you guys kind of the burst go. So I've already got a ton of rage. Let's just assume that this target's got like 5 Sunders on it, get behind it so it doesn't parry, and I'm ready to do my go. If the target is off of stun DR, I haven't used intercept recently, my pally hasn't hodged the target recently or anything, so what I'll do is I'll get an auto attack off, and then I'll kind of back up, pop my Death Wish as well as my on use, get an intercept in, I'm gonna auto attack, slam out of that, and then Mortal Strike right out of that, and then Whirlwind, and execute if I need to. So as you can see, crazy amount of damage there, almost a 5k execute with that burst go. I'll do it one more time. It's super easy. You could even do it with not that much rage if you have blood rage. So I get a charge in, auto attack, get a slam off, blood rage into a mortal strike, and then execute out if you need to. So that's kind of your burst go with Imp Slam, as you want to get that auto attack off, then slam, and then either a mortal strike or another big damage ability out of that, like an execute. So I want to talk about positioning. It's very important as a warrior to have really good positioning. You don't want to be overextended or caught out in the middle of the map against something that can blow you up very quickly. So looks like I'm fighting Hunter Lock here, so I'm just going to get on the Hunter right away. I'm trying to line as much of the lock damage as I possibly can. So I'm kind of hugging this pillar here. I'm going to go ahead and Trinket that coil, and then I'm going to Fear Lock out of that. And then I'm going to stun Hunter, and we're going to kill Hunter in the stun here. Nice. Escape Artist that. But it's very important that you have really good positioning. Against Rogue Mage, it's incredibly important that you do not overextend to go and kill the warrior, or I'm sorry, to go and kill the priest or something, to go and kill the rogue because he vanished and went behind a pillar. It's very important that you guys stay hugged at a pillar, or if you're fighting something that you want to fight out in the middle of the map, that you're playing smartly. So now here that we have the arena ended, we've got this big center column here. 80% of the games that I fight, I just stay along this pillar, because if my pally or if my healer gets sheeped or something, I want to be able to line of sight enemy DPS and try and stop damage. Because if you're just sitting out in the map, just training, tunnel visioning the whole time, you're gonna basically be always taking damage, and so you're always a target. And so it's very important that you guys go in at the correct opportunities, or let the enemy overextend to your position to where then you guys have the advantage of the pillar. I'll cover some potential comps that are really good for Arena as Warrior. Now it definitely evolves as the seasons evolve, from season PvP season 1 to season 2, season 3, stuff gets more powerful, stuff gets more tanky, blah blah blah, etc. So PvP season 1, and throughout kind of the entire TBC expansion, Warrior, Warlock, Druid will be your best go-to comp. You have rot pressure from the Warlock, fears from the Warlock, you've got insane heals from the Druid, insane CCs from the Druid, Entangling Roots clone, and then you have your insane damage, and the biggest thing is you have Mortal Strike. So if you guys play Warrior Lock Druid, you are going to have a blast if coordinated correctly with your teammates, and you're going to do very well. other potential 3v3 comps as a warrior, one that I'm playing is I'm going to be playing Frost Mage, Holy Pally, Arms Warrior. This is a very different kind of arena comp where we have Poly, we have Hodge, and we have Fear with me. So we're going to be polying off target, trying to Hodge, kill target, and see how we do. Hopefully we'll do well. Warrior also pairs well with a Hunter. If you guys could find a Warrior Hunter Druid comp where the Hunter is constantly scattered, trapping off target or healer, putting up wing clips, putting down those snake traps or those freezing traps, you guys can do really well. Hunter Warrior is a really good comp, and yeah. Now you can try and play Warrior with the Shadow Priest or something, but you're most likely just better off playing... You could play Warrior with the Shadow Priest, but you're better off playing Warrior with a Disc Priest or a Healer. Shadow Priest is good if it has something that can assist it a little bit more, like a Rogue or like a Mage with God Comp or something. With Warrior, Shadow Priest isn't the best because... Now the best healer for Warrior is definitely going to be Druid. Holy Pally is a very, very close second. Druid is only a better healer because of the fact that they don't have to really cast a heal. With Life Bloom, with Swift Mend, with all these instant cast heals, rejuvenation, they hardly have to cast a heal, and that's the only reason why I would say Druid is better than Pally. Otherwise, Pally's better than Druid because they can give that freedom, they can give that defensive bop, they can give a sack, they have so much utility, as well as a Hodge and burst damage. A lot of people don't realize that Holy Pallies have a burst potential, so if you compare that up with the Warrior burst, you guys can land some crazy kills. So those are the kind of comps that I think are really good. I'm personally going to be playing a Frost Mage Warrior Holy Pally comp in Season 1, and then depending on how we do, we'll decide whether I go either a different class or we continue the same comp in Season 2. I'll go ahead and conclude this very long guide for how to be a good TBC warrior. Kind of the key things to take away from this guide is really kind of 2 or 3 main factors. The biggest one is positioning in arena, and the second one is kind of how you're playing warrior. Not necessarily the specific abilities you're pressing, but how you're playing a warrior strategy-wise. In arena, whether it's 2v2 or 3v3 arena, warrior can be played very Mongo, where you're just training DPS the whole game. You know, you're training a target and you're just doing damage the entire game. But in TBC, if you want to push high rating on warrior, you really have to look for those key opportunities of swaps. So whether that's swaps onto an off target, whether that's swaps onto a healer, whether that's swap onto another DPS, or whether it's swap onto a pet or something. That's what really makes a good warrior good in TBC, are those swaps, are those good positioning, knows when to go into the battle, he knows when to pop his defensive abilities like a spell reflection or a disarm, or put on a one-hander and a shield. So to take away from this guide, you really want to try to be as survivable as possible on warrior. The damage will come naturally with Death Wish, with an on-use trinket when you're ready for that burst potential, but outside of that burst go, you just need to live. So getting up those 5 Sunders on a Druid, or getting up that demo shout on a Rogue, and preparing for your goes by trying to force a trinket early with either like a fear, or try to force a trinket early with a fake go or something, will really help you throughout the game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this warrior guide. I didn't go too in-depth into actual specific arena gameplay because it's too situational. I tried to just show you guys how to do the best against certain classes, little tips and tricks and outplays against certain classes. I think the best way for you to learn how to play warrior visually is by watching a live commentary. You guys can learn a lot by that. So please, if you have any questions on TBC Warrior, I will be happy to answer them, or any questions about TBC in general, I'll try my best to answer them. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please smash that like button if you enjoyed this big damage guide, and I'll see y'all in the next video.